Hello dudes, dudettes, duders, and everyone in between. Today we're looking at the Zoom L-20 and explaining how to use it. For this overview, we are only focusing on the face features of the console and will not be diving into any of the greater connectivity between the console and computers or the console and tablets. The first thing we're going to look at is pipeline, then we'll look at amenities, and finally we'll discuss how you can combine the built-in tools for live and studio productions. This video is not a review of the product. I want to field test it a bit more before I do a proper review. This is also not a tutorial on recording techniques, mixing, or mastering. We're only going to look at signal path as it can be controlled on the face of the Zoom L-20. By the end of this video, you should have the technical know-how to sit down at an L-20 and make the most of it. This video covers how to use it. How you use it is something that will take more time and experimentation to learn. For this video, I'm running audio on the Zoom L-20 and a Zoom H6, which is receiving the master out via XLR and monitor A via 1/16" cable. We'll get into why I'm doing it that way a little later, and we'll make it clear which audio you're hearing when we switch between the different feeds. For most of this video, you'll be hearing the audio from the Zoom L-20, and I promise that you will know when you're not. A board like the L-20 can look intimidating at first, but don't be fooled. It's a simpler beast to tame than you might think at first blanch. Getting a signal from a microphone to speakers can be broken down into two chains, the input chain and the output chain. Let's start with the input chain. At the top of the L-20, you'll find jacks for XLR or quarter-inch inputs. You can use microphones that require phantom power and microphones that don't, as well as quarter-inch line-level jacks from electric guitars, basses, pianos, and organs. Next down is the phantom power switch. On most Zoom equipment, you can turn phantom power on and off for each individual track, but here you do it for 4 tracks at once. Here are some quick rules of thumb for phantom power. Number 1, check if your microphone requires phantom power. Early in my career, I'd often forget to do that check and would end up scratching my head when there was no audio signal. Second, most dynamic and condenser mics that don't require phantom power won't be affected if you plug them into a feed with phantom engaged. Check with the manufacturer before testing. I'm not paying to replace any mics that you break. Third, never ever send phantom power to a ribbon mic as it could lead to complete particle reversal. Fourth, never plug line-level instruments into a feed with phantom power engaged as it could potentially damage your gear. And last, only turn phantom power on after the mic is plugged in and turn it off before unplugging the mic. Moving down the audio chain, after the phantom power switch will be one of 2 switches, high Z or pad. If you're using a microphone, leave these switched off. If you're plugging a guitar or bass into channels 1 or 2, turn high Z on. If you're using feeds 3 through 16 for line-level instruments, turn pad on. Next up is the signal LED, God bless it. If it's receiving a signal that's good, it'll turn green, as you're seeing it do right now. If you're close to clipping or clipping, it'll turn red. This LED is literally your guiding light for checking that you've got a clean signal. Underneath that are 2 knobs, gain and compression. The gain knob adjusts the loudness of the signal being received. Compression is a bit more complicated. Compression is a signal processing operation that reduces the signal's dynamic range. That is to say, it makes quiet sounds louder and loud sounds quieter. If you're recording a crunchy, distorted electric guitar, there won't be much need for compression because there won't be terribly complicated dynamics going on. The quietest sound that a guitar on overdrive produces isn't that much quieter than the loudest sound it produces. Some vocal performances can benefit from a bit of compression though. A good singer will bring a lot of nuance to their performance, much of which might be lost if it's buried under a live band. Be careful not to overcompress though. I'm not trying to create a generation of Rick Rubins here. Next on the chain is the select button. You'll notice that it's blue instead of gray or black. Selecting a track will mean that you have it engaged for adjusting the channel strip settings. We'll get back to those in a bit. Right now, we're just trying to get the audio into this device and out again. Next is record play. If you want to record this track, you have to engage the record button. If you want to play this track, you have to engage the play button. Moving down, there's mute and solo. Mute will silence the track, and solo will silence all tracks that don't have solo engaged. Finally, you have a volume slider. When you first sit down at a console like this, it might seem like the gain and volume sliders do the same thing, that is, adjust the volume of the signal. There's a difference though. The gain is used to make sure that the signal you're receiving is as loud as possible without clipping. All devices produce some amount of noise, including the mixing board. If you have your gain set too low, you'll have to boost the signal later, and when you do, you'll be bringing up the noise of the device along with the noise of the instrument. When you set the gain, you want to get as close to clipping as you can without ever clipping even a little. This will make it so you don't have to amplify the signal much in post, if at all. The volume slider affects volume, but not at a recording level, only at an output level. The sliders are for setting the volume of instruments and vocalists in relation to each other. The workflow I recommend is setting your gain levels one by one and then not touching them again. When you want something to be a bit quieter or louder in relation to other instruments in the mix, use the volume sliders. Congratulations! We've made it through the audio in-chain. Everything you've learned for track 1 is the same through track 16. Like 75% of this board. Tracks 17 through 20 are a bit different. You'll notice that they are coupled. These are for stereo signals from instruments like an electric piano or an organ. There is also the option for RCA, which is useful for plugging in a mobile device if you have a karaoke track or something like that. The USB audio return switches are used for interfacing with a computer and are slightly outside the scope of this overview. Everything is the same from there on down the line. Now that we've got audio coming in, let's get some audio going out. I'm going to switch the audio from the board recording that we've been doing to the Zoom H6. As we increase the master volume, the output signal gets louder. Spectacular! You've now gotten audio into the device and out of the device, and it sounds clean. I've been recording the audio to this device for this tutorial, and I'm going to cut it off now so that I can show you how to record. Let's take a look at the display. You will notice that there is a small mic and a slate button. Use this to slate recordings. When you start recording a take, press the slate button and say what you're recording. For example, say what you will, take 5. Or something like that. You'll notice that this onboard mic is very low quality. That's fine. Menu will take you to the menus, and this knob helps you to navigate them. We won't be getting into that in this video, maybe in a future one. The tempo button is used for setting your tempo, and it's as easy as tapping the button to set your tempo. We'll leave it at 101.6, that's fine. Down here you've got rewind, fast forward, and overdub. Again, overdub is something that we'll get into in a future episode. It's a deeper feature of this device, and we're just trying to get a signal in and out and recorded. Recording is super easy. First, make sure the tracks that you want to record are engaged. This is a really easy mistake to make if you're working with a lot of instruments. Honestly, when working on big projects, I engage the record for every track and leave them be. I always prefer to accidentally record too much than accidentally record too little. Once your tracks are engaged, press the record button. This will engage the virtual record head but won't roll the virtual tape. To actually start recording, press the play button after you've pressed record. Once the time code is counting, you're off to the races. One thing that's important to note is where on the signal path recording occurs. You've got this long chain of command from the signal coming into the board through when it leaves via the master out. Recording stops here, under compression. To demonstrate what I mean, we're going to switch to the audio being recorded on the onboard SD card. The first thing I'm going to do is adjust the gain volume. As I turn it down, you won't be able to hear me, and when I turn it back up, you can hear me again. If I do the same thing on the volume slider, you'll hear no difference to the audio. Staying with the internal SD card recording, I'm going to adjust the compression knob so you can hear what it does to the audio. This is not compressed at all. This is overly compressed. And this is in the middle. Audio recording ends at the compression knob. Any changes to the signal made after that will feed through the master out, but not to the internal recording. Let's make some changes to the signal that will affect the master out. To do that, we're going to switch the audio to the Zoom H6, but only the master out signal. There's a good bit of fun to be had with the channel strip. Kids are going nuts for channel strip settings these days. We're only going to adjust channel strip settings for channel 1, but these same principles apply across the board. Just remember to select the track you want to affect before noodling by pressing the select button. Let's select track 1 and then jump into the strip settings. The green knobs are your typical equalization knobs. High either amplifies or attenuates the high end of the signal. By turning it up, you make the higher end louder, and by turning it down, you make the higher end quieter. The frequency and mid-range knobs are tethered together. The frequency knob defines what frequency you're affecting, and the mid knob defines how much you're affecting it. So let's do a high frequency, and we're going to turn that high frequency up, and now we're going to turn that high frequency down. We'll return that to the middle, and let's go for a mid-range frequency. We're going to turn that mid up, now we're going to turn that mid down. You can hear how it's affecting the audio. Next in the chain is the low end. Turning this up will make your low end louder. Turning it down will make your low end quieter. Let's reset that. Finally, you've got low cut. It's really easy for low hums to creep into live audio, whether it's from a bad ground or an overly distorted guitar that makes a deep, eternal burping sound even when it's not being played. If you want to cut the bass signal, this is the knob to do it. So now there's almost no bass in that signal at all. And it sounds like we're overly compressed again. By combining compression and EQ settings, you can take a boring voice like mine and make it richer and more intense. Let's start by turning up the compression on my voice. That'll do for now. Let's turn down the high, boost the mid, and boost the bass a lot. And we're going to cut some of that low-end hum out of there. All right, and now we've got a much more boomy, intense voice that is more present in your ears. Also, if you want to cut all EQ, you just tap this EQ off button, and now we're back to my normal compressed voice. So we're going to turn the compression down, and we'll turn that EQ back on. EQ off, EQ on. There we go, pretty simple stuff. The button next to the EQ off button is the invert polarity button, and the inversion of polarity is outside the scope of this beginner tutorial, so we'll just leave that one off for now. Moving up, you will find a red knob labeled pan. If you're finishing to mono, you can ignore the pan pots. We are recording the stereo, so I'll demo it for you. Simple as can be, left channel left, right channel right. Now we get into the fun ones, effects 1 and effects 2. Effects 1 is focused on reverb, and effects 2 is focused on echo. To engage the effect, you first turn up the send effects knob. I set it to 0 to start from there, but you can adjust it afterwards. You'll notice that there's no effect happening yet. That's because we've only sent the signal to the effect. To hear the effect, you'll have to turn up the return fader, and as we boost it, you can hear the effect coming in. You can choose your effect by turning this knob and then pushing it to engage that effect. So now we're in the hall, now we're in the room. From there, you can adjust the tone time and the decay as you like them. These principles apply to the effects 2 track as well. Turn the send up, set it to 0, and then bring in the effect. A clever bit of programming on this device is that the echo is based on the tempo of the song. If you tap out a faster tempo, the echo will happen faster. Let's do exactly that. All right, here's the tempo at 89.8. And now we're going to tap out a much faster tempo. We're at 250, and 250 sounds like that. This is neat because if your drummer is listening to the onboard metronome, your singer's echo will sync with the beat of the song. There's also mute and solo. Let's turn the effect back on so that we can hear what those do. Mute will mute the effect, simple as can be. Solo will solo the effect, so you're not hearing the audio from the mic, you're only hearing how it's being affected by that effect. And it sounds something like this. As you're playing, you might find settings that you really like and you don't want to lose. You have 9 scenes in which you can save your settings. To demo this, we're going to set up 2 distinct channel strips. First thing we're going to do is kill the high end and boost the bass as if we're trying to sound like some radio disc jockey. Then we will save this to scene 1. Next, we'll kill the low end, boost the high end, and add a lot of reverb and echo. We'll save this to scene 2. Now, it's as simple as recalling the scene you want to hear. The last thing to talk about are monitor outs and fader modes. At the top of the board, you'll find 6 monitor out jacks. These are discrete outputs that can be sent to individual headphones or monitors. With this knob, we can control the volume level of the entire mix being fed into monitor A. This button switches between the master out and the settings for monitor A, and finally, you have a switch for headphone and for speaker. Make sure you have this one set correctly, as you can seriously damage your equipment or your ears if you have it set incorrectly. Perhaps the master outs are going to a PA system and monitor A is going to the lead singer's monitor, and they want to be able to hear their voice without any of the gobbledygook of the rest of the band. If that's the case, you go down to fader mode and select monitor A, and then bring the volume of the musicians down. Now, monitor A is only the vocal track, but not the music. If we were to switch the headphone feed from monitor A to master, you'd hear that the master out is still playing the backtrack at full volume. It's only monitor A that has that silent. This unlocks tremendous combinations. Perhaps you have 2 podcast hosts and a guest, all of whom have headphones on. You can have a producer in the ears of the hosts that the guest never hears. Perhaps you want to send a click track to your drummer, but nobody else. You can do that. 4 more things and we've covered the face of this device and we're done. This knob selects the headphone mix that the console operator can hear. This adjusts the volume for the console operator's headphones, and this is a record play for the master mix that's happening in addition to the 20 raw tracks that you have over here. Finally, there's a mute button, and if you press that, you can't hear anything. And that covers the face of the Zoom L-20. If this was useful, please let me know in the comments below. If this was useless, please tell me why, and maybe we can cover what was missed in a future episode. I warmly invite you to subscribe, turn on the bell for notifications, and click that like button if that's what you're into. We do have the ongoing gallery series over on Patreon, as well as a new series called Under Over My Head, which focuses on the ongoing challenges of always punching above one's weight class. We're currently producing a concert that is way outside the scope of anything I've ever done in my life, so if you'd like to see the story of a couple of hopeful young dreamers who may succeed or may wipe out spectacularly, as I did in that sentence, that's the series for you. As always, thank you for watching. Now please, go burn a copy of Mein Kampf.